To the world, I am the daughter of a great general, and the scandalous princess who is a regular in the city's pleasure quarters. Every glance is an act, every indulgence, a mission. He is as ethereal as a god, yet he became the only cure for my nightmares. I was ordered to hunt down the prince of a fallen kingdom, but I never imagined I would fall so deeply in love. Now blood stains the sky over the imperial palace. My sword is at his throat, but his hand covers my own. In this game of power and conspiracy, falling in love is the deadliest trap of all. After the prince announced he was taking the beautiful Mistress Zhang into his household, countless people were laughing at me behind my back. But if there's one thing the city has, it's men. And the Phoenix Pavilion, in the East End, was full of handsome ones. So, on the day the new concubine arrived, I reeked of alcohol and marched straight for the Phoenix Pavilion. The moment I walked in, my eyes landed on one man. He stood in a corner, a stark contrast to the others who fawned over guests, desperate to show off their charms. He was like an untouched lotus blossom, blooming quietly in the mud, pure and serene. I shoved aside the sycophants who swarmed me and pointed a finger at the beautiful man. "I want him," I roared. Then, I stuffed a stack of silver notes into the pavilion master's hands and strode proudly toward my prize. The man was startled, but he recovered quickly. A faint, perfectly calibrated smile appeared on his lips, the kind of alluring smile that seems meticulously practiced. I walked right up to him, grabbed the collar of his robes and said fiercely, "Wipe that fake smile off your face." The man's smile didn't falter. His voice was clear and gentle as he said, "My name is Julian Lin." In a private room, dressed in white, Julian Lin seemed almost unreal, like a deity from a painted scroll. He let me tug at the sash on his waist and muss his robes. I looked up at him and thought, he really is handsome. Julian Lin looked down at me and asked with a smile, "Are you truly the Princess of Qian? The one and only?" I let out a drunken hiccup. "I hear you only entertain high officials and nobles. Tell me, is a princess high-ranking enough for your tastes?" Julian Lin smiled, his glistening, almond-shaped eyes breathtakingly beautiful. "More than enough." The new concubine was a real troublemaker. Emboldened by the prince's favor, she relentlessly picked fights with me, both openly and in secret. I grew tired of it and just decided to move into the Phoenix Pavilion. Besides, I could sleep with Julian Lin in my arms at night and watch a troupe of handsome men sing and dance during the day. Life was wonderful. "Aren't you afraid the prince will be angry that you're holed up here with me?" Julian Lin popped a peeled grape into my mouth, his voice tinged with a faint worry. "What's there to be afraid of?" I said, unconcerned. "I'm young, rich, and beautiful. Why should I stay cooped up in that suffocating cage of a manor, putting up with their nonsense?" After that, I went on a long rant, cursing the concubine, the prince, and even the emperor for arranging such a miserable marriage for me. Julian Lin remained silent, his brow slightly furrowed in thought. "What are you thinking?" "I'm just worried. Aren't you afraid of losing your head for criticizing the emperor like that?" "Our emperor is magnanimous. He would never execute someone without cause," I said, staring at him. "He's a good ruler who loves his people." Before I even finished speaking, I saw a strange flicker in Julian Lin's eyes, like a cold sneer. When I tried to get a better look, his expression was as gentle as ever. "Julian Lin," I paused. "Is something wrong?" "It's nothing," he said with a smile. "I was just thinking that you truly are a remarkable woman, unlike any other." "Am I really that special?" I laughed. "Be careful not to fall in love with me. There's no future for us." Julian Lin smiled back. "I will." Julian Lin's birthday arrived. I brought several jars of the finest wine from the prince's manor, determined to get thoroughly drunk with my beautiful man. As it turned out, he wouldn't touch a drop of alcohol. I tried to needle him. What kind of man doesn't drink? But Julian Lin just smiled and said he couldn't hold his liquor. Frustrated, I petulantly tossed my gift into his arms, a pouch I had embroidered myself. Julian Lin froze, staring at it without moving. "You think it's ugly?" I glared at him, though I felt a little insecure, because, to be honest, the thing was ugly. Before he could answer, I held out my hand for him to see, pointing to the red pricks on my fingers. "Look," I whined. "They're needle marks. It hurts so much." Julian Lin's brow furrowed. "You shouldn't have gone to so much trouble," he said in a low voice. Hearing this, I threw myself into his arms and started wailing. This is the first time I've ever made something like this for a man. How can you be so ungrateful? For the first time, a helpless look crossed Julian Lin's face. I seized the opportunity and forced him to drink 3 cups as a forfeit. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he complied. True to his word, Julian Lin fell onto the bed after just 2 cups, fast asleep. I crouched by the bed, watching him for a long time. Asleep, his brow was slightly furrowed, as if burdened by some great sorrow. His long lashes hid the gentle smile that usually danced in his eyes, lending his sharp features an air of distant vulnerability. No matter what, his was a face I could never tire of. Looking at him, I whispered, "Maybe in the next life, we can be friends." With that, I quietly closed the door and left. Spring turned to autumn, and a year had nearly passed. I found I'd grown used to having Julian Lin around. "No one has ever stayed with me this long," I said casually. Julian Lin's eyes were gentle. "And no one has ever stayed with me this long either," I said playfully. "Julian Lin, I'm suddenly realizing I couldn't bear to part with you." There was one more thing I didn't say out loud. Sometimes, when I was with Julian Lin, it felt like we were more of a real husband and wife than the prince and I ever were. No one had ever been so gentle and patient with me. If a man like him had been born into an ordinary family, he would have made a good son and a wonderful husband. My days at the Phoenix Pavilion were carefree, but the same couldn't be said for life back at the prince's manor. But perhaps the heavens took pity on me. Or maybe they just couldn't stand the concubine's antics anymore, because one dark and stormy night, she was attacked. Luckily, she was frightened but unharmed. The prince arrived just in time to save her. The concubine lay in the prince's arms, crying beautifully, then pointed a trembling finger at me and choked out, "Princess, how could you be so cruel?" She insisted that I had ordered an assassin to take her life. Hearing this, I suddenly laughed. I gave her a mock salute and said, "Thank you for the brilliant idea, my dear concubine." Back in my room, I locked the door from the inside and dismissed my servants. The room was so quiet I could only hear my own breathing, and then the sound of approaching footsteps. Suddenly, a click echoed from the painting of a steed on the wall. The painting lifted, and a man walked out from behind it. "You work fast, Prince," I said with a smile. "Have you finished comforting your dear concubine?" Arthur Wong sat down, a smile playing on his lips. "Is my princess feeling jealous?" I scoffed. "My title of princess is just for show. In truth, his coldness toward me and my scandalous behavior have all been part of an act." Arthur Wong chuckled. "That was a close call back at the manor. You don't suspect I was behind the assassination attempt?" "Not you," said Arthur Wong. "It was him." "Impossible," I said flatly. "He wouldn't waste an assassin on a mere concubine. If he wanted someone dead, it would be you." Arthur Wong said, "In my opinion, this little performance was staged just to let you vent your anger." I waved my hands dismissively. "Take such a huge risk for me? Absolutely not." Arthur Wong smiled and shook his head, then his expression turned serious. "The Imperial Guard sent a secret report. He's about to make his move." Although I had expected it, I was still stunned. After a long pause, I finally nodded. "Understood." Arthur Wong stared at me, his ink-black eyes reflecting my dazed expression. He opened his mouth to speak, but in the end, just sighed. "Be careful. Don't let yourself get trapped." "Don't worry, Prince. I know what's important," I promised, word by word, though I wasn't sure if I was saying it for him or for myself. "Clara Yi will not disappoint the Emperor or you. The world is full of coincidences." The very next night, Julian Lin was also targeted by assassins. As it happened, I was at the Phoenix Pavilion at that very moment, showing off my treasured sword to him. I was just explaining how the sword had been with me on the battlefield, how it was my most beloved possession, when several men in black crashed through the window. With swords drawn, they charged straight for Julian Lin. Before he could react, I drew my sword and met them head-on, keeping him safely behind me. It was me against 5. The assassins were highly skilled, and I was struggling to hold them off. I yelled for Julian Lin to run, but in that moment of distraction, one of them slipped past me and lunged with his sword at Julian Lin. I didn't have time to think. I threw myself in front of the blade. The next thing I knew, I was lying in Julian Lin's arms. An intense pain shot through me. Before I lost consciousness, my last words were, "Julian, run." When I opened my eyes, Julian Lin was staring down at me with a complicated expression. I gritted my teeth. Damn, that hurts. Those bastards really played for keeps. I asked what happened to the assassins. Julian Lin told me that after I collapsed, they simply stopped fighting and inexplicably retreated. "My beauty," I said, holding Julian Lin's hand with tears in my eyes, "you must have been so scared." Julian Lin just stared at me. "For saving my life, I will surely repay you in the next one." "Stop talking about the next life," I interrupted. "It's bad luck." He just smiled, then got up to bring me a bowl of hot congee, which he began to feed to me. "I don't want it," I whined. "I want noodles." "Congee is good for your stomach. Once you're better, I will make you noodles." I said weakly, "Today is my birthday. I have to eat noodles or I'll have a short life." Julian Lin froze, then put down the bowl. "Wait here." "Wait," I called out weakly. "Add extra scallions and cilantro and a poached egg on top." "Julian Lin, you're a really good cook." I contentedly ate 3 large bowls of longevity noodles, then praised him while rubbing my warm, full belly. "I'm glad you like it. From now on, you have to make me noodles every year for my birthday." After a long pause, he finally replied, "All right." His tone was so gentle yet so solemn. I don't think I'll ever forget it. Lately, I've found myself at the Phoenix Pavilion more and more often. I've discovered that Julian Lin is good for one thing: sleep. Before I became a princess, I followed my father onto the battlefield. We fought bloody wars to defend our home and country. My hands are stained with the blood of countless souls, and I have seen more gore and cruelty than I care to remember. The world sees only the great general's daughter, a young woman who is a match for any man. They don't see my pale face in the dead of night as I toss and turn, trapped by nightmares. In my dreams, there are bleached bones and an endless pitch-black darkness. The torment of endless nightmares and sleepless nights was a sickness no medicine could cure. Not until I met Julian Lin. That night, drunk, I leaned against him and fell into a deep slumber. For the first time in years, I had a dreamless night, and I woke with a clarity I had long forgotten. Julian Lin once asked me if I lavished fortunes on him only to use him as a sleeping potion. I pinched his cheek and replied with a smile, "No, it's mostly because I'm captivated by your unparalleled beauty." Julian Lin smiled, his glistening phoenix eyes breathtakingly beautiful. "You often stay out all night now, not returning to the manor. I fear it's against protocol." "What?" I gripped his chin, my tone sharp. "Are you tired of me? Trying to send me back?" "I wouldn't dare," he said, taking my hand in his. His was warm. He smiled gently. "I'm just worried that if you stay away from the manor for too long, malicious tongues will start to wag." I laughed. "Slander me for what? For dallying in pleasure houses and living a life of debauchery?" My tone was flippant. "What's there to be afraid of? Everything they'd say is true anyway." His grip on my hand suddenly tightened, his voice urgent. "Don't listen to their nonsense. You're not that kind of person." Tsk. I reached out and stroked his cheek, smiling. "Oh, Julian, you've fallen for me." Julian Lin stiffened, then smiled as well. "I am of humble birth. I wouldn't dare presume to speak of love." "Nonsense. Humble or not," I cupped his incomparably handsome face and commanded, "Julian Lin, I demand you say you love me. Princess, say it." A flicker of struggle crossed his faintly blushing eyes, but in the end he obediently whispered, "I love you." I froze. After a long moment, I lowered my gaze and asked languidly, "My beauty, if one day I were to leave this place, would you be willing to come with me?" Julian Lin clearly hadn't expected me to say such a thing. Surprise flashed in his eyes before he quickly regained his composure. "Wherever you go, I will go." I lifted his chin, looking straight into his clear, glass-like eyes. "Do you mean it?" "I do," he answered, word by word. That very night, Arthur Wong dragged me back himself. He barged into the Phoenix Pavilion and tore me from Julian Lin's arms. The night air was so cold I shivered. Julian didn't spare Arthur so much as a glance. He simply draped an outer robe over my shoulders. Arthur Wang coldly ordered his men to beat Julian Lin. I threw myself in front of Julian, shouting fiercely, "Who dares?" "Move aside," Arthur Wang said. His gaze made my heart stop. I knew what was coming. I knew I should move, but my body refused to obey, remaining stubbornly planted in front of Julian. Arthur Wang sighed, then knocked me unconscious with a single blow to my neck. When I woke in my room, it was already broad daylight. "Where's Arthur?" I demanded, grabbing April's sleeve. April said the prince had left the manor, but no one knew where he had gone. "You should try not to dwell on it, Your Highness. Last night, the prince ordered that you are not to leave the manor for the time being." I was under house arrest. Was he worried I'd ruin everything? A seed of resentment took root in my heart. Why did the emperor have to choose me for this task? But I suppressed the thought as soon as it appeared. As the daughter of a long line of generals, I must always place the nation's interests before my own feelings. At the emperor's command, I would walk through fire and face any danger without hesitation. But 7 days later, I was finally released. Like a bird freed from its cage, I flapped my wings and flew straight to the Phoenix Pavilion. I climbed the familiar stairs and walked to the end of the corridor. I pushed open the familiar carved wooden door. The first thing I saw was a pearwood desk. On it were several neatly stacked opera librettos I had brought over to pass the time. Next to the librettos were an inkstone and a bamboo tube holding 2 calligraphy brushes. Further inside was a Nanmu wood couch, its bedding all in plain colors. There were no other decorations. The entire room was simple and tidy, exactly as I had left it. Nothing had changed, except he was gone. Julian Lin was gone. I stood frozen, hand still on the door, before the reality of it sank in. I turned and stumbled towards the pavilion master's room. "Julian Lin?" The pavilion master paused. "Hasn't he been in his room recovering?" The master explained that after Julian was injured by the prince, he had sent for a doctor. The doctor had applied medicine and told Julian to stay in bed for a few days. Julian hasn't set foot outside his room. Even his meals have been brought to him. "Huh? Princess, why do you look so pale?" I pushed away the master's supporting hand, my voice hoarse. "That doctor? Which way did he go?" "Oh, I really didn't pay attention." I returned to Julian's room and collapsed onto the couch. The couch was cold, but the faint scent of his ink still lingered. My mind was a tangled mess. My body felt frozen, as if I'd lost the strength even to stand. I always knew this day would come, but I never expected him to leave so quickly, so heartlessly. All those days and nights we spent together, was it all an act? Oh, Julian Lin? Julian Lin. Leaving disguised as a doctor, how clever. And to think I was worried about you for so long. Princess. A familiar voice came from above. I looked up in disbelief to see that familiar handsome face. Julian Lin was leaning over me, frowning. "Why are you crying?" Words caught in my throat. I stared at him blankly. It had only been a few days, but he seemed thinner. The sharp new lines of his face added a hint of severity to his otherwise captivating features. When I didn't speak, the furrow in his brow deepened. He leaned down and gently pulled me into his arms, his voice as soft as moonlight on the wide river. There, don't cry." The familiar scent of ink filled my senses, and the warmth from his lean but firm chest spread through me. I seized the chance to wrap my arms tightly around his waist, my voice muffled against him. "I thought you'd left." "How could I?" Julian chuckled, patting my back as if I were a child. "I told you, wherever you go, I will go." "What if I go to hell?" "Then I will go to hell." Such beautiful words of love. Even if they were lies, I was content. "Julian," he paused for a moment, then gave a soft, I usually acted the scoundrel, leering and calling him my beauty over and over. I rarely used his name so seriously. His name was beautiful. I wondered if his real name was just as beautiful. "Julian, if we were to leave the capital, where would you want to settle down?" Julian Lin was silent for a moment before replying slowly. "Jiangnan. Jiangnan is on the border of the Liang Empire. It once belonged to the resource-rich Yan Empire, but 8 years ago, the Liang Empire launched a campaign to expand its territory. They were victorious. The Yan Empire is no more. Now there is only the Liang Empire's Jiangnan. Jiangnan is crawling with bandits. Why would you want to go there? The mountains are vibrant and the waters are clear. It's a place to rest body and soul." I smiled, tracing circles on his chest with my fingertip. "As you wish, we'll set off tonight." The moment the words left my mouth, the arms holding me stiffened. A strained voice asked from above, "What do you mean?" I pushed against his chest to sit up, looked him in the eye and said seriously, "Julian, I don't like this place." "I don't like it either." "Then let's leave, shall we?" I emphasized each word. Us, together. But Julian, who had just sworn he would go wherever I went, didn't answer right away. His face was a mask, but hesitation flickered in his clear eyes. I knew he was searching for the perfect answer, but I wanted to see him struggle. Uncharacteristically, I pressed him. Give it all up and leave with me. Are you willing or not? In the end, he only sighed. I can't leave here. Not yet. I let out a cold laugh. You promised over and over that you'd go where I go. Was it all a lie? He didn't explain, just lowered his eyes and said quietly, Please forgive me. His lowered lashes hid the emotion in his eyes, whether by design or not. You're so reluctant to leave this damned place. You haven't found someone else behind my back, have you? I would never dare. Then tell me, why won't you come with me? I have my reasons. What reasons? I pressed him relentlessly, as if possessed. Because if I missed this chance, the path ahead was a bottomless abyss from which there was no return. Julian Lin stared at me, silent. I didn't back down, my eyes locked on his. I wonder if you remember? Julian Lin finally spoke. The reason I ended up in this place. Of course I do. Julian Lin came from a small vassal state in the northwest, the son of a respectable family. But fortunes can change in an instant. The Lin family's growing prosperity attracted envious eyes. 10 years ago, one night, a group of masked assassins broke into the Lin estate and slaughtered the entire household, over 100 people. But amidst the chaos, Julian's mother hid him, and he miraculously survived. Later, while on the run, he met the master of the Phoenix Pavilion, who brought him here. Julian's account of that day still rings in my ears. Though his tone was calm, every word was soaked in blood and tears, and my heart had clenched with pain. Thinking back on it now still fills me with heartache for him. I keep my promises, I said, looking into his eyes. If you come with me, I'll protect you. I understand your good intentions, but I am burdened by a blood feud. How can I hide under your protection and live out my days in peaceful obscurity? Then, I secretly clenched my fists, keeping my voice calm. What are your plans, Julian? Naturally, Julian's eyes darkened as he said, word by word, to take my revenge. I laughed, my voice faint. My Julian, such ambition. Julian Lin stared at me, his expression unreadable. He suddenly grabbed my hand and pried open my clenched fist, revealing the deep crescent marks my nails had dug into my palm. His long, cool fingers gently traced them. He let out a barely audible sigh. What am I to do with you? He lowered his gaze, his long lashes hiding the emotion in his eyes. Julian, your enemies. Where are they now? I waited a long time for his answer. His voice was heavy. Right here in the capital. Must you have revenge? I must. It's dangerous. I know. After a moment, I asked, Do you know martial arts? The answer was what I expected. I do. Can you protect yourself? This time he didn't answer. I looked up from his embrace, pressed a finger to his Adam's apple, and repeated, Answer me. Can you protect your own life? I don't know. But you still want revenge, even if it costs you your life? Yes. I grew agitated and grabbed his collar. Your mother gave her life to save you, not so you could go and get yourself killed. Julian gave a bitter smile. I can't let it go. The hatred runs too deep. If I don't risk everything to try, my life will be a fate worse than death. I let go of him, my hands falling limply to my sides. I fell silent. The sky outside grew darker and darker. Julian and I were like a pair of mandarin ducks, clinging to each other. The water beneath us seemed calm, but a tempest was brewing in the depths, ready to surge up at any moment and tear us apart, dragging us into eternal darkness. We were silent for I don't know how long. The room was so quiet, I could hear only our breathing and the steady, strong beat of his heart against my ear. I greedily inhaled his scent of ink, counting the rhythm of his heartbeat. The silence was finally broken when Julian spoke. Abandoning your status to run away and live as a commoner? Were you serious about that? Of course, I answered without hesitation. When that time comes, will you still have money for the journey? His question took me by surprise. Then I smiled. Are you reluctant to leave with me because you're worried I can't support you? The corner of Julian's mouth curved into a faint smile. I have a gift for you. You'll see it the next time you visit. He thought for a moment more, then gently opened my palm and placed the jade pendant from his neck into it. My mother obtained this jade pendant from the most venerated temple in our hometown. I've worn it since I was a child. His clear, star-like phoenix eyes filled with sincerity. Today I give it to you. May it protect you and keep you safe your whole life. I clutched the pendant, its warmth still holding his own, spread from my palm to my heart, bringing with it a deep, sharp pain. Outside the window, the last traces of the sunset's warmth had faded. The sky was dim, and a chill began to fill the air. I calmly pulled my hand from his. It's getting late. I should be going. Arthur Wang had sent someone to remind me that I absolutely had to be back at the prince's manor before dark. Julian Lin looked at me, his expression unreadable, but in the end, he just said softly, "All right." I stopped at the door, my back to him. "Before I became a princess, I was a general." "I know," he replied. My voice was rough. "Protecting the Liang Empire is my duty." His answer was the same. "I know. I'm going now." "Princess," he called out to me. He stepped forward and gently hugged me from behind. His voice, coming from just above my head, was a little hoarse. "Don't come looking for me for the next few days. Stay in the prince's manor. Don't go anywhere. I'm begging you." I raced back to the prince's manor on horseback. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The atmosphere was completely different from usual. There was no one. It was terrifyingly quiet. My hand went to the hilt of my sword as I slowly walked deeper into the manor. Someone was behind me. I spun around in a flash, my sword unsheathed and thrusting straight at the person behind me. "My lady!" I wrenched my sword to the side at the last second, and it clattered to the ground. Before me stood April, her face pale. If I hadn't pulled back in time, she would now be dead at my feet. I let out a ragged breath, then asked urgently, "Where is the prince?" "The prince went out with the side consort. He told you to stay in the manor and not go anywhere." Before I could react, April raised her hand, and a cloud of powder billowed into my face. I collapsed, my limbs paralyzed. I was stunned. "You!" April slowly walked over, bent down, and helped me onto a nearby couch. "The master would never harm you. Just get a good night's sleep. By tomorrow, this will all be over." With that, April turned and left. The vermilion gates of the imperial palace stood wide open. Bodies in red and black armor lay strewn across the ground, their blood dyeing the palace road a chilling, dark crimson. I could hear the clash of weapons from inside. Without a moment's hesitation, I spurred my horse forward, the smell of blood growing thicker in the air. I charged ahead, sword in hand, and in an instant cut down several enemy soldiers. "Clara, yay!" I heard Arthur Wang's voice from behind me. I rode up to meet him. "I'm late." "The Emperor won't blame you," Arthur said, his voice low. "April confessed before she died. She faked my orders to lure you back to the manor." My blood ran cold. "She's dead?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Yes," I tightened my grip on my sword. I didn't dare look at the sea of bodies, afraid I would see a familiar splash of green, and afraid of who else I might find. "And him?" I finally forced out the question. Arthur paused. "He's not dead yet." He raised an arm, pointing. "He's in there." His finger was aimed at the Brilliance Hall, perched atop more than a dozen steps, high above the cloud and dragon reliefs. I looked where he pointed. The great doors of the Brilliance Hall were dark and gaping, like a monstrous mouth ready to devour a person whole. Only a few enemy soldiers in black armor were left. The defeated remnants were putting up a final, desperate struggle, falling one by one into pools of their own blood. Arthur's tone was flat. "Victory is already decided. He won't live to see tomorrow." I was silent for a moment. I understand. After 10 long years of enduring humiliation, he had still lost in the end. "You Liang Empire dogs, die!" An earth-shattering roar erupted. A burly old general broke through the encirclement, his long spear thrusting directly at me. After only 10 exchanges, I had the old general in a steady retreat. It was clear his strength was spent. Thud! I kicked him to the ground, and he couldn't get back up. At the brink of death, he threw his head back and laughed maniacally before cursing, "You of the Liang Empire are heartless and treacherous." At the birthday banquet, your dog emperor clearly accepted the Yan Empire's tribute and promised not to invade our territory for 10 years. But not even half a month later, you broke your promise, invaded our lands, and slaughtered our people. Our emperor had already submitted a letter of surrender, willing to become a vassal state to Liang. So why? Why did you still have to slaughter the entire Yan royal family? His voice stopped abruptly. A long sword, appearing from nowhere, was lodged squarely in his chest. My body went stiff. The old general's furious roars echoed in my ears, nearly shattering my eardrums. Amid the ringing, I vaguely heard Julian Lin's calm voice. A group of assassins broke into the Lin estate and slaughtered all 100 members of my family. My entire clan was massacred. I watched my mother die horribly right before my eyes. After the bloodbath, they threw torches everywhere. A great fire burned for an entire night, reducing the vast mansion and all the bodies to ashes. You must have your revenge? I must. Prince Adrian Chi and the princess consort have worked hard. Once this matter is settled, I will reward you generously. The emperor's voice sounded suddenly beside me. I quickly came to my senses and knelt. My thanks, your majesty. He smiled and told me there was no need for such formalities. The emperor, dressed in imperial yellow, was noble and immaculate, a stark contrast to the blood-soaked scene around us. He squinted, his eyes scanning the area. The last of the enemy soldiers in black armor had been annihilated. A satisfied smile touched the corners of the emperor's lips. His gaze finally settled on the Brilliance Hall as he said slowly, "There's only one left." Those words made my palms break out in a cold sweat, and what he said next sent a chill down my spine. "I leave this man to you, princess." My face paled. I cupped my fists. "Clara Yi accepts the order." I slowly ascended the steps. In my peripheral vision, I could see the stone carvings of clouds and dragons between the stairs, mottled with blood. I climbed the dozen or so steps one by one. By the time I finally reached the entrance of the Brilliance Hall, it felt as if all my strength had been drained away. I forced myself to stand tall, making sure the back I presented to the emperor looked straight and unwavering. I entered with my sword drawn and saw him at once. In the center of the Brilliance Hall stood a figure in black battle armor. Gravely wounded, he still stood silent and proud, like a steadfast pine. He was familiar, yet a stranger. All his usual gentleness was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp austerity. "You're here." A smile touched his lips, and the grim aura around him vanished. His slightly curved eyes filled with the same tenderness as always. But my heart was seized by an invisible hand, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. Suppressing the suffocating ache, I said to him, "Julian Lin, you can't escape." Julian Lin hummed a soft, his tone calm. "The exit is sealed." The exit he spoke of wasn't the main doors, but one hidden within the hall itself. They had schemed for years, planting their own people inside the palace. Over a decade, they had used that access to painstakingly dig a secret tunnel. It led from the Brilliance Hall, at the very edge of the palace, to the outside. It was their path to survival. If their plan failed, they could have escaped through here. But that path had been discovered, and it had been blocked. I was the one who discovered the secret passage. "You're so clever, my lady," Julian Lin managed to smile. "I can't hide anything from you." I looked into his eyes. "You let your guard down around me." 1 year ago, a spy who had infiltrated the remnants of the former Yan dynasty reported that they had found the former crown prince. He was hiding in the capital's most famous pleasure district, the Phoenix Pavilion, under the name Julian Lin. He was befriending officials and nobles to gather intelligence. So, Arthur Wang and I posed as an unhappy married couple. It was the perfect excuse for me to frequent the Phoenix Pavilion for amusement and deliberately get close to Julian Lin. When we first met, my only thought was to find a flaw in his defenses, an opening for the eventual capture of all the Yan remnants. But Julian Lin was extremely cautious. He was like a wolf wearing a mask of gentleness, a dark glint occasionally flashing in his eyes. But he still miscalculated. On his birthday, the wine he drank was laced with a colorless, odorless sleeping drug. After he had fallen into a deep sleep, I found the hidden compartment under his bed. Inside was a map of the Brilliance Hall, showing a hidden tunnel leading out of the palace. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking," I said, half joking, half serious, "that I should have killed you sooner. If I had killed him sooner, I wouldn't be standing here now, filled with regret, barely able to hold my sword steady. But if you had killed me sooner, how could you have lured all the Yan remnants into today's trap?" Julian Lin slowly walked toward me. I gripped my sword, my palms slick with a cold sweat. "Clara Ye." It was the first time he had ever called me by my name. The two simple words rolled off his tongue with a unique intonation. That day, even if the prince hadn't come, I would not have hurt you. I was silent. He knew everything. That night, Arthur Wang had stormed into the Phoenix Pavilion, playing the part of a furious husband, enraged that I was dallying with a male courtesan. In reality, he had received an urgent report that the Yan remnants were gathering, likely to make a move that very night. Worried I was in danger, Arthur had taken me away, injuring Julian Lin in the process and disrupting their plan. You saved me. How could I ever hurt you? But that assassin... Enough, Julian Lin interrupted. Clara, don't say it. He didn't want me to say it. That the assassin that day had been arranged by me, that saving him at my own risk was all part of my design to win his trust. Perhaps he had known all along. Julian Lin reached out and cupped my cheek, then lifted my chin. Clara, look at me. I met his eyes. They were like a deep pool of spring water reflecting my own lost and bewildered face. His thin lips parted and he softly spoke two words. Kill me. My body stiffened as if a storm were raging in my ears. He was asking me to kill him. I stared at him, my voice distant. Do you have any idea what you're saying? They're all outside, Julian Lin said, his gaze fixed on mine. Waiting for you to kill me. Yes, the Liang Empire's Imperial Guard, the Prince, and the Emperor, they were all waiting for me to kill him. But I couldn't do it. Julian Lin's hand covered mine on the sword's hilt. He squeezed, and a familiar warmth traveled from the back of my hand straight to my heart, making my chest ache with a swelling sorrow. To die by your hand, I am willing. His voice was gentle, yet he pressed on. Kill me. Put the Liang Emperor at ease. My vision blurred. I choked out the words, Julian Lin, I gave you a chance. When I offered to take him away from here, I had meant it. We have no way out now. The moment he refused to leave with me, our fate was sealed. Julian Lin gently wiped away the tear at the corner of my eye. Clara, I am the crown prince of the Yan Empire. This is the path I was fated to walk. I have no other choice. Yes, he was the crown prince. He carried the pain of a fallen nation and the heavy burden of restoring it. He wasn't alone. Behind him were thousands of his people and the remnants of an army that had hidden for 10 years. They had placed all their hopes in him, believing he could lead them to avenge their country and their families, to revive the glory of Yan. Even if it meant eternal damnation, they would not hesitate. His hands were tied, just like mine. Princess, is the matter handled? The Emperor's voice came from outside the hall. He was pressuring me. Even Arthur Wang could see the turmoil in my heart. How could I hide it from the Emperor? I bit my lip until it bled. Julian Lin raised his hand and gently wiped the blood from my mouth. Then he leaned in, his own lips brushing against my broken one. A faint, metallic sweetness spread between our lips. I responded to him greedily, insatiably drinking him in. In a daze, my right hand was overcome by a powerful force, and I lost control in an instant. Hack! The sound of a blade piercing flesh echoed through the fragile quiet. I shoved Julian Lin away, my eyes wide with disbelief. He had grabbed my hand and driven the sword I was holding into his own chest. The blade was buried to the hilt. My hand trembled as I let go. I staggered back 2 steps, barely able to stand. A second later, I regretted it. Julian Lin pulled the sword from his own body, and blood gushed from the wound. Forcing himself to stay upright, he raised a trembling hand to offer the sword back to me. Don't get your treasure dirty. I knocked the sword from his hand and caught him as he fell. Julian Lin. His already pale face grew even whiter in my arms. His breath was faint. My gift to you. It's in the secret compartment under my bed. I don't want a gift. I let out a heart-wrenching hoarse roar. I just want you. If you die, no gift in the world can make me happy. Julian Lin, don't you dare die. If you die, I'll strip you naked and throw your body to the dogs. I was rambling, threatening him, begging him not to die. A small smile tugged at the corner of Julian Lin's mouth. He looked like he wanted to laugh, but when he opened his mouth, a stream of blood poured from his lips. It stained his cheeks and my hands. My hands had been stained with blood innumerable times, but never had it terrified me like this. Julian Lin shakily raised his hand and touched my cheek. His fingertips were cool, but his voice was as gentle as the winter sun. There now, don't cry for me. Leave this place, go to Jiangnan, live the life of an ordinary person. A young woman shouldn't always be fighting and killing. Take care of yourself. Live a long, long life. Don't cry, don't cry. I held him, sobbing uncontrollably. Julian, don't die. I'm begging you, don't die. Please, Julian. Julian. The body in my arms grew cold. Julian Lin closed his eyes. If not for his deathly pallor, he could have been sleeping. He used to look just like this when he slept beside me, his face peaceful and beautiful, though his brow was always furrowed, as if weighed down by countless worries. Now his brow was finally smooth. I hadn't slept properly in 5 days. The moment I closed my eyes, all I could see was him. I would never again rest my head on his chest, never again hear the steady, strong beat of his heart. I was afraid I would never have a peaceful night's sleep again. With the threat of the Yan Empire eliminated for good, the emperor was overjoyed. He bestowed many rewards upon Arthur Wang and me. I asked for nothing, only for a single decree: to renounce my titles as general and princess, to become a commoner, and to leave the capital. The emperor looked at me meaningfully for a long time, then granted my request. Before I left, Arthur Wang came to see me. "Are you really leaving?" he asked. "Yes." Arthur sighed. "Fine, take good care of yourself." Then he added, "I've prepared some travel money for you. Take it." "That won't be necessary," I cut him off with a smile. "I have my own." That day, I went to the Phoenix Pavilion one last time. Before he left, Julian Lin had paid the proprietor 1,000 taels of gold to buy his freedom. He'd instructed her to keep his room as it was, and only do with it as she pleased after I had come to visit. The proprietor, grinning from ear to ear as she clutched the gold, had obediently followed his instructions, leaving his room untouched for my arrival. I climbed the stairs. At the end of the hallway, I pushed open the familiar carved wooden door. Everything inside was exactly as I had left it, only the person was gone. This time, he was truly gone. Julian Lin would never be coming back. I crawled under the bed and pried open the secret compartment. Inside the square box, a long leather case sat quietly. I carefully opened it and saw a thick stack of banknotes, enough to live without a worry for several lifetimes. I picked up the banknotes and found a slip of paper underneath. On it were just a few words, written in elegant, flowing script that radiated a gentle spirit. It was from Julian Lin. He had written, "Don't force yourself to endure it. Leave if you want to leave." That fool. Did he really think I was suffering some injustice at the prince's manor? My cheeks felt cool. I reached up and found my palm wet with tears. As I was going downstairs, I ran into the proprietor of the Phoenix Pavilion. Seeing my red-rimmed eyes, she tried to console me. "Try to look on the bright side. There are plenty of fish in the sea. We have countless beauties here. Julian Lin is gone, so just pick another one who's even more handsome." She thought my visits here were just about indulging in handsome men, a game to pass the time. Everyone at the Phoenix Pavilion thought so. At first, I had thought so too. I thought I would play the game until the very end. Who would have known that in the end, the pretense would become real? Although he couldn't abandon everything to leave with me, I understood. If it were me, I wouldn't have been able to let it go either. 100 years from now, the name Julian Lin might be nothing more than a footnote in the history books of the Liang Empire, an insignificant remnant of a fallen nation. No one will ever know or remember what kind of person he truly was. Only I will. Only I will remember that there was once a prince of the Yan Empire named Julian Lin who, in a foreign land, endured a bitterness and pain few could imagine, yet still chose to remain gentle and kind. He kept his heart pure even while trapped in the mud, and was even willing to give his life to protect the one he loved. Jiangnan is beautiful. The scenery is as lovely as I remember. Julian, we've arrived in Jiangnan. You were right. The willows here are graceful. The landscape is like a painting. Your homeland is truly a beautiful place. I used the money you left me to buy a courtyard house. It's right by the willow-lined riverbank near the stone bridge. Black tiles, white walls, it's our new home. Julian, we're home.